And we're back. Welcome to the Pinedo Brothers podcast. This is your host, Peter Pinedo, and I have right with me...
Howdy, JP
James.
here.
All right. So, welcome back. I'm glad that y'all are with us. Today, we're back to talking about the Unfollowed. But this time, it's going to be a little bit of a different episode. This time, usually we kind of draw comparisons between like what inspired us and how our work is kind of similar to that in different ways. But this one is still in the same idea of what it inspired us, but it inspired us to do something different, I think. So today we're talking about the Unfollowed and how it kind of plays a part in what I call the culture war. And by that, culture war. We're always talking about war and battlefields here. I think, you're noticing a trend. It's the way it works. But yeah, what I mean by the culture war is this kind of war that's kind of taken over society, in that kind of a lot of art these days and media are constantly on the attack and kind of putting down kind of Christian values, family values, and how, and we're going to talk a little bit about that, and then also how I responded to that in the Unfollowed. So a lot to get into. So I'm excited. But
me too.
Yeah. But before we get into it, really, let's give you a little context. Let's give you what is out there right now.
Could you remind people though who we are, like what our mission is?
Yes, of course. So sorry, we are the Pinedo Brothers. We are Catholic artists and filmmakers. When we're here to kind of revitalize the world of Catholic art and make it what it once was, something great, something
the best
beautiful.
In the world.
Yeah. So this is very, integral to what we do, this topic for today. So without further ado, let's jump right into it.
Woo!
Yeah, we're going to show you a clip from a really great show called Arrested Development, which is really funny, and it's a great show. But I think that you'll kind of see in this clip a little bit of the view that the outside world, the secular world, has about Christians. So it's kind of funny, but we'll talk about it. We'll go ahead and play it if you can, James.
And my daughter won't give me the time of day. How was your party?
Oh, it was good. They're kind of religious, Anne's family, so it was just kind of...
The word George Michael was searching for was creepy.
Jesus, bleibt mein Brot, meine Herzen, trust.
Give me a hand with that little fella. Jesus,
We're back.
And we're back. Yeah, so it's pretty funny.
I mean, I can't watch that and not laugh.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a satire. So we're supposed to be able to laugh at ourselves. There's a few points in there that might be a little bit below the belt. Maybe.
Yeah.
Like the whole, I think sometimes there's a desire for people to make Christians as dirty and evil as they are. And there's a lot of pedophilia in Hollywood, and so I think portraying Christians of doing that that might be a little bit below the belt for having that. But it was funny though. As funny as that can be, I don't know how they pulled it off, but they pulled it off. Any case, go ahead.
Yeah, So that's one thing, kind of a way that Christians are oftentimes seen. But I think, kind of on a different note. A clip that we were thinking about showing. It was a clip from another great film called Loving Vincent, which is about the incredible artist Vincent Van Gogh. That's how they say it in the movie.
I need to watch it so I can know how to say it properly.
Van Gogh.
We've got him right behind us, so
Van
Gogh.
But yeah, he in the movie. It's not a big part of the movie, but there's just kind of like a one scene where this Christian in the film comes off as someone who's very judgmental and kind of is quick to kind of just push this person aside and be just like very much like, oh, this is a terrible person. I'm kind of asserting their moral superiority. And I think that is also kind of a view of Christians that the secular world has, of people who are like that, who are very closed off and kind of set in their own kind of superior, delusional world. And so those kind of things really, have affected me, and it kind of made me think about the way, the world sees us and how wrong it is in many ways. But obviously it's there for a reason. There's people who are like that, but it's obviously not everyone. So let's talk about the Unfollowed a little bit. BJ, while I look for the quote, can you give a little bit about the Unfollowed, a little information maybe?
Absolutely. So The Unfollowed is a novel written by Peter, in which the world is, it's fallen apart. There is all of the media, technology, everything is shut down, and the main character and his family has to just try to find a way to survive when there's this sudden new onslaught of the zombie apocalypse that descends upon him. And this is a very different sort of zombie apocalypse, in that you are thinking the whole time as you're becoming a zombie. And lo and behold, the main character gets bit. And it's about him trying to help out his family, help out the woman that he loves, save the woman that he loves, help out her brother before he succumbs to this disease. Mm-hmm. But in any case, I'll shoot it back to Peter.
Okay. So I'm going to read you a little excerpt from one of the chapters. And this chapter is written from the perspective of the character Tobias, who, if you haven't read the book, is gay.
And Tobias is the brother of the woman that the main character loves.
Yes, he's the little brother of the main female lead. So this chapter is written from his perspective. So let's dive right into it. As I stared through the cold window at the swaying trees, I contemplated what had kept me back all those years ago. Why didn't I just run for that council? I could have kept my friends, my purpose, my safe place, but I couldn't. Until I saw Zoe being carried away by the followers, I never knew why. Now I knew. Now I understood why I let my entire life fall back into shambles when I refused to run. It was all tied into Zoe. Zoe understood the whole time. She was the only one who ever understood. She saw me for who I truly was, even when I didn't know who I was. Who was I? A human being, just a person. She loved me not for what I represented or what I stood for. She just loved me because I was her little brother. When Kev asked me to run, something shook me in my core, but I had been too blind to realize what it was. I didn't want to run because I didn't want that to define me. I didn't want to be Tobias the gay person or Tobias the straight person. I just wanted to be Tobias the person. I realized that as Zoe was being carried away by the merciless hands of those thugs, the followers, the same kind of thugs who beat me up outside of that school. And then I'm gonna skip through a little bit and cut to the end of the chapter where it goes, only Zoe's love made me understand who I truly was. As I stared out those windows, I decided then and there I would not be defined by being gay. I wasn't going to try to be straight. Kev was half right. We are who we are. We're people. But I would choose what kind of person I would be. I would be the kind of person who loves his sister. The kind of man who would not give up. The kind of man who would walk to the ends of the earth and take 1,000 beatings just to let her know I love her. Why? Because she's my big sister. So yeah, Tobias, I really love that character, obviously because I wrote him.
Well, he's a good character.
Oh, thank you. But yeah, I think that it was, for one, I love him obviously because I wrote him, but also because he presented an interesting challenge to me, because that was a character writing where a perspective that I hadn't really put too much time thinking about. and that I don't really have firsthand experience thinking that way. And so I really wanted to try to do this character justice and understand him in not a one-dimensional way, but in understand him as a three-dimensional person with contrasting feelings and different kinds of emotions. And so you might be asking at this point, like, why did I even do that, and why include a homosexuality inside of this story, which is supposed to be a faith story? Why even talk about that?
Well, I remember I asked you that.
Yeah.
I asked you, what's the point of this? Why are we doing that?
Yeah, because I know that there was a lot of dangers in it, for obviously, because to me, storytelling is not about like putting out messages, and obviously there's some messages being put out there, and so that's kind of going against what I normally try to. My philosophy for writing is normally just to tell a good story if you can. But I did feel kind of called to include those, those kind of characters and that kind of those kind of ideas, because it's so relevant to the world that we live in today, and everybody's talking about it. Everybody in the media, everybody in the the art and the media world is everywhere. You watch The Walking Dead, it's everywhere in The Walking Dead. You watch or you play a game like The Last of Us, it's all over the place in The Last of Us. And so those are two stories that really inspired the Unfollowed, and they had so much of that. And so I think that because those stories inspired me to write this, I kind of felt like this was a part of it that I wanted to include. But I wanted to do it from a Christian perspective, which you don't really ever get in these things. So it's kind of including, it's something that's not out there in the world today, a Christian perspective on these issues. And I feel like if it's just these other people who are talking about it, if Christians are too scared to talk about it, or too afraid, then there's only one perspective that's going to be out there. So my kind of mindset for this was like, well, let's try to understand this from a Christian perspective and put out our thoughts about it. And that kind of ties into our topic today about how does the world of art and media kind of see Christians, and how do we contrast that with what we present in the Unfollowed? Yeah. So first thoughts.
Well, there's the Arrested Development way. I think that there's a lot to be said about the Arrested Development way, because I did a little research about this. My wife and I were talking about it, and so because of that, I was like, well, let me see what I can dig up about this. And I didn't do, I was a busy work day today, so I wasn't able to do too much, but I found out a study that took place in 1998, in which, over 20 years ago, in which they said that at that time, 41% of the country was a regular Christian church of some sort goer. Mm-hmm. Weekly was what they called regular, and 2% of Hollywood was. So that was a I'm sure that has changed. I think both numbers have gone down exponentially, and I'm sure there's a paper out there that I can use to verify that. But let's just take it at that. Suppose it is 2%. That means that it is not unlikely that these Hollywood people have never set foot inside a church. And they might never have actually talked to someone about Christianity. Generally the Hollywood crowd is pretty spiritual, but Christian spiritual, not as much. And so
spiritual.
And so I can bear that out in personal experience. I've worked with a lot of movie studios, locations departments, where I'm talking to a scout, and oftentimes I'm talking to them in a church, because we're talking about shooting in a church. Mm-hmm. And they've never been in there. They feel like, you can see it in their body language. Most of the studio people that I talk to are uncomfortable with being in the space of a church. They think they might spontaneously combust or something. So I think you see that in Arrested Development quite a bit, is there's no knowledge of of what this is. And I have to imagine the writers sitting around in like the writers' room for Arrested Development, and they're like, well, what does a Christian Christmas party look like? And so they have the huge cross up there, and they're all sitting around with singing. I guess that's what they think Christmas carols sound like. Well, actually, Christmas carols don't sound like that, guys. But it's I think the first thing is a lack of knowledge. There's no idea about what this actually is, and that's the first thing that comes to mind.
Yeah, and that lack of knowledge is kind of I think detrimental to society in some ways, because it's presented from that very secular and oftentimes anti-Christian perspective, but they might be a very small minority of the country, but they're broadcasting to everybody else. It's a large swath of society, and so in that, when that's constantly being pushed out into society, that kind of becomes a threat to kind of subvert faith and family in the modern world.
I think that the subversion thing is more common with the other crowd, where there's the crowd that just doesn't know and is not comfortable, and then there's the crowd that has a bone to pick. I don't think that Arrested Development really has a bone to pick, at least in that series, in that season or in that show. They go a little bit darker in other shows, but there is a crowd of people that has a serious bone to pick, where they want to, like you say, subvert the family or subvert the faith, the practice of the faith in some way. Like I said, I was doing a little bit of research, and I just was clicking around trying to find movies or TV shows where the central character is a Catholic. I was like, let's focus this in and say Catholic. And it's something that I generally don't watch films that the central character is Catholic. Generally when a central character is Catholic, they're only a priest, because it's unheard of for someone who's not a priest to be a Catholic in most times. Or I guess the gangsters, some of them are Catholic, but they're not really Catholic. And so anyway, I was counting this up, and it was a long chain of, I found 19 movies, and I cut it off at 1990. I was like, okay, let's start from 1990 and on. So the past 30 years, I found 19 movies or TV shows. I would say 2 of those that I saw, and I've seen very few of these, but 2 of those from just the write-up and the synopsis were positive. They had positive representation of the Catholic in them. And the
2, how many did you say?
19 are what I found.
Okay.
And 17 were the priest ranged from, they were mostly priests, some of them nuns, but ranged from pedophiles, rapists, serial rapists, just milquetoast sort of individuals, outwardly gay priests that were out to, that was their thing. They were working with their homosexuality, and so it was nothing to do with the practice of the faith, the practice of the religion. And, and it just, there's the obligatory exorcists, where the exorcist goes wrong. There was this one really crazy one where the exorcist got possessed, and I was, as I was clicking through this, I was like getting depressed. Yeah. There was a lot of this that is just, they have a bone to pick here, and it's not goodwill. Sometimes it's goodwill. Sometimes it's just not knowing. And so how do you portray something you don't know? Other times it's, we want to break this down. This is something we don't like, this practice of the faith, the practice of the religion, and let's do something to change it. And that's a little bit more problematic.
Yeah, no, that's very, very interesting to me. So 19 films, you said?
Yeah. I'm not going to say the names because they looked pretty bad.
Yeah.
The one,
don't look them up, everybody.
The one that I found that I thought, oh, this would be kind of interesting, was a 1996 movie called Sleepers, in which it seemed a little raunchy, but the main characters were mentored by Robert De Niro, who is a priest. And Robert De Niro probably wasn't a very good priest, but he was good to the boys. It seemed like that he mentored. He was trying to look out for them. So that was the only one.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's definitely that. I've seen both, like just ignorance about the Catholic faith, and then active kind of belligerence towards the Catholic faith, and so that's why it's so important for people in the media and artistic industries to present their faith and to not hide it, to not be shying away from difficult topics like homosexuality, especially because there's so much conversation and dialogue about these things, and there's not much from a Catholic perspective. Go ahead.
I mean, on top of that, maybe this is the wrong time to talk about it, but for crying out loud, support. If you're not going to support us, support some filmmaker, some person that is willing to portray. There's filmmakers out there besides us that are willing to portray priests in a positive light. It's just people don't watch them. And maybe it's because people don't know how to watch, like how to find their content. But look, in the 50s and 60s and 40s, you know, the some of the most popular movies out there, I think about Going My Way, it won an Oscar for Best Picture, and it's about a Catholic priest that helps children in the inner city, and it's a wonderful flick. The people that are making films in Hollywood, if they think that there's money to be made, they will make a film to get that money. And maybe not all of them, but the ones of goodwill will.
Yeah.
And if we would support that, it's a lot of the problem of us that we don't support this content. There's also a problem there's not good content out there to support. Yes, there is that, but there is it goes both ways.
Yeah, and I think a lot of Christians who are not in the artistic or media industries also shy away from entertainment industry, thinking like, oh, it's something there's so much evil and bad in it that we need to stay completely away from it, and that's what's making this problem here, and that's what's causing this lack of good content, because Christians are not funding projects like that. So if you're a Christian out there and you want to see good Christian content, make your voice heard. People, we work in a capitalist society. These people are motivated by money. And if you tell them, hey, I'm a Christian, I wanna see these kind of projects, I support it with my dollars and everything, then they're gonna respond to that. They don't even have to be good. They don't have to be good or well motivated people. They can just be completely motivated by money and still do it because, hey, you're gonna go to the theater and spend money on it. So Christian, if you're a Christian and you're listening, please spend your money on Christian content. It's important. We can't completely retreat from the world that we live in.
Maybe it's something that'd be good to do is post, because I think that the answer that Christians could give us is that, how did you find it? How do you find this content? And how is it good? How do I know that A, it's not going to offend me, but then B, it will entertain me? Which there's most of the time, I, at least as a Christian looking to find content to watch, I feel like I have to walk that tightrope where, okay, will I be bored or will I be offended? And I seem to have to choose which one, being bored or being offended. Maybe we should try and post in the comments section or in the description some ideas for people to check out.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah.
But one of them obviously is this. If you like to read, it's designed. The Unfollowed is designed to be a story that a Christian can benefit from, but also not be bored with, like you're saying. And then of course going back to this idea of why talk about homosexuality in this kind of story that's supposed to be about faith inspired and things like that. And I think what I was reading from that excerpt is very, very important to the whole dialogue and what's not really being put out there today. And today, it's very. I think I'm of the opinion that society kind of is constantly just kind of swinging from one extreme to the other. And I guess From at least I wasn't alive in the 50s, but from my understanding of the 50s, people were extremely anti, gay, and people would get, if anyone found out you were gay, they'd hurt you, or they'd marginalize you and things like that. And now we've swung to the opposite extreme where it has to be praised and everyone looks up to you and, oh, you're so noble and brave.
So brave.
No, I mean, these are just regular people like you and me. They're human beings. They have their own struggles, and this is their struggle that that we may not struggle with, but it's a different kind of struggle. And I think something that I love about the church is that it has avoided kind of swinging from, as its teaching has avoided swinging from extreme to extreme. In the 50s, it wasn't like out to lynch all gays, and now in 2020, it's not out to praise their bravery and everything. It's out to minister to them the same as it ministers to all people, which I think is something that people don't understand about the church today. They're like, oh, the church is the Catholic Church is very anti-homosexuality. They're so judgmental, and you're like, no, they've been teaching the same thing for 2,000 years now about these kind of ideas about that. The church perspective hasn't changed. These people are people with inherent human dignity, and that's what I try to talk about in the book. Tobias, he has this, but this is not what defines him. He is a three-dimensional person. The reason in the book, you kind of, I guess the part that I was reading, maybe you didn't understand because we were a little bit late, but he had gotten this opportunity to represent an LGBTQ plus group, and it was going to come with benefits, scholarships, and to college and all kinds of great things, but he didn't want to do it, and he was marginalized from his friend groups for not doing it but he didn't even know why he didn't want to do it until at this point in the book. And it was because he didn't want that to define him. He wanted to have the freedom of being a three-dimensional person and not being put in a box. And so I think that's what is great about the Catholic faith, is that it doesn't put you in a box. It allows you the liberty and the freedom to think in a three-dimensional way, to see people as they truly are, as people, as children of God. And that's what is not being presented in the world today about the Catholic Church and these kind of topics. Yeah,
it's definitely not being presented. I'm at odds here because I think that it's a topic that's so overrepresented that I'm starting to get tired of it as like a filmmaker, as a storyteller, that it's another gay story sort of thing, or it's another, like, I'm getting the fatigue of that obligatory gay character that they have, and I sometimes it's for me it's like, is that so here's the example that I've got. Chopped. I watched the show Chopped on Hulu from time to time, and it's a Food Network show in which they a bunch of chefs compete to be the best chef of the episode. And the only time it comes up, sexual preference comes up, is if the guy says, "Oh, I'm gay," and it comes up all the time. Though it's just, it seems like you have to say it just to say it. Like, no one else brings up their sexual preference.
Yeah,
it's because it's not important to the what's happening.
Can you imagine that in the shop? You'd be like, yeah, and I'm straight, and everyone's like, oh, so pretty. That's great. Good for you.
Yeah, good for you. I mean, it's becoming so that it's virtue signaling to say it. It's a means of virtue signaling, and I don't want to go to a point that we're outcasting someone based upon sexual preference. But I'm just getting tired of that. It's getting beat over my head every time. It's just, it's not interesting. I mean, if you put it into a context in the story where, because of the circumstances of what's happening, the sexual preference that fuels the conflict. Okay. But if you're just creating something where you can pat everyone on the back and make people feel good, it's boring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I think the media that's out there today is very inundated with those kinds of messages, those kinds of things, and that. In addition to that, is things like tons and tons of Mary Sue characters, like Rey Skywalker or whatever her name is in Star Wars, where it's just like, you're being constantly beat over the head with these kinds of ideas, and you have to. I think that the idea of it is that they're going to keep on beating us over the head with it until we are beaten to submission, until we agree with everything that they are trying to make us agree with. And obviously that's not what storytelling is supposed to be about. It's supposed to be about entertainment and inspiration, and having people be, just entranced by this reality that you're presenting. So, yeah, I agree with that. There's definitely a lot everywhere, and it can get very tiresome. But I think my thought for the Unfollowed was it was hopefully a little bit less tiresome because it's being presented from a different perspective, something that you don't get as often. And yeah, so hopefully it's a perspective that is not offensive and wasn't trying to be offensive to anyone in the story.
Well, that's a tricky thing too. I didn't find it offensive, but I think you could very easily say that someone who was a Christian could get offended by that, and I think you could also say very easily that someone who is not a Christian, could get offended by that. That was one of the things I remember writing you, is like, this has the capability of making no one happy and everyone unhappy.
Yeah.
Which it doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, and I applaud you for doing it, but...
Yeah. No, but I think that's funny that you say that, because that's also the way that the Catholic Church has been. It's taken the middle ground by not, taking the extreme, let's burn and marginalize all gays, to, we can't, be condoning this kind of behavior. And everyone on both sides has been mad and angry at the church for it, because why don't you do this? And why don't you do this? No one is happy with it, because the church is standing up for all people and accepting them as human beings, and kind of trying at the same time still trying to direct them towards their salvation into heaven as the ultimate goal. So
thank you, Mother Church.
Yeah.
And that makes me think also that there's also that swath of movies. There was a small, a little slightly less than a handful of them that were pro major character, because it was pro Pope Francis, who they were portraying as someone who's going to change the church teaching on homosexuality, which I did not count as portraying a positive, in a Catholic light, because that is not positive.
Yeah.
But in any case, yes. Good, thank you, Church.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mother Church.
Yeah. There's a lot of misunderstanding out there right now about that too. Go ahead.
Speaking of misunderstanding, we're starting to get a little over time, and I feel like we would be remiss, and I know we didn't talk about this beforehand, if we didn't at least chat about, we're having an episode on the culture war, and we should probably, it would be remiss if we don't even chat about what's happening with elections right now, and what's going on in our country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, craziness. It's a disaster. Yeah. What specifically are you kind of referring to? What do you think?
Well, for me, what really incenses me is the censorship that we're seeing, where the White House press secretary can get cut off mid.
Yeah, that's wild. That's like from the Hunger Games.
Yeah, exactly. It's something you would expect to see in a movie, like a dystopian movie. And I think as Christians, as Catholics, as people that are more conservative generally, I could say you and I are both very conservative, we should start wearing it as a badge of honor if we get that little YouTube disclaimer at the bottom of our, this You know, whatever YouTube is saying about, oh, you shouldn't trust this. It's like, yes, you're doing something right. Like, and people should go and like search out that stuff that has that disclaimer, because this censorship is getting insane. It's incredible. I think beyond the fact if the Supreme Court or whatever court decides if it is been fraud or voter fraud or whatever it is, just the fact that we can't talk about it now anywhere without getting in trouble is what gets me.
Yeah. What I posted on the other day on the Panetta Brothers page on Instagram, I was like, who died and left the media industry in charge of our democracy? Like, why does the media, people like Disney and CNN and MSNBC and New York Times, why do these people think that they are the oligarchs of our society? What? Like, what?
The sheer amount of people think that the gall of thinking, oh, we are that much better than you, that we're going to decide and dictate what you can listen to because you can't handle it. Who do they think you are, Jack Nicholson? You can't handle the truth. What is happening?
Yeah, it's very much. Yeah, and I definitely have seen in the last few years a kind of a movement away from traditional media industries, and hopefully that continues to happen, that people will wise up to this thing, that these people literally think that they're better than us. They think that they are the cultural elite, and that they can dictate what is truth, what is science, you know? They can say, oh, the president's not listening to science about like wearing masks and this is what science is saying, and at the same time they'll be like, yeah, we're gonna ignore the part of science where they say that the baby is in the womb is a human being, or and that you can switch genders, and there's nothing biological about gender, and things like that. So. Yeah, they think they're the cultural elites, and they think that they can dictate the rules of the game. And I think that it's time for people to jump ship, to jump to something else.
And that's why I loved that you suggested talking about the cultural war, because this is a cultural war. Our cultural betters out there that are wanting to dictate how we think and how we process information. They are the ones that we need. They need to be torn down. These idols that they've put themselves on a pedestal as an idol above us, and that cannot stand. That is not how a republic works. That is not how democracy works. That is not how people that are free to think and decide for themselves can be treated and should be treated. And because of that, I love how you brought up this as culture war, and as part of that culture war, we need to disown these media elites out there that are dictating to us. I love how the Daily Wire calls it legacy media and not mainstream, because we're in the mainstream. 70 million people voted for Trump. They're not all not in the mainstream because they voted for Trump.
They're all deplorables and racist.
That's pretty mainstream, guys. So what we need to I think we should come up with a better misnomer a better title for that. Old world. I like saying old world media, and I want to become disowned, because I don't want old world meeting, OWM, disowned, because I don't want to be owned by these people. Disown them. They
think they're the oligarchs of our society, and they don't realize, the demos, the people, are in charge of the democracy, and they have a choice. You have a choice as a person to step away from the lies that are being fed to you, and not just the lies, but the forced perspective. You have to think in this way, and you have to believe these things, but not those things. To be a good person, we've kind of had enough of it, and I'm grateful for things like the Daily Wire and these alternative media outlets, and hopefully you can subscribe to us, the Panetta Brothers, and things like that, where we give you different kind of perspectives on things, and we are not telling you have to agree with us. If you don't agree with us, then that's fine. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion. But
doesn't make you a bad person.
Yeah.
But it does mean that we'll come at you with our argument, because
Yeah.
the reason why we believe what we believe is because we think it's right.
Yeah.
So if you disagree, well, then we're going to disagree with you because we think it's right. But we
Yeah.
want to listen to your agreement. It doesn't make you a bad person, and that's a big difference.
Argument and debate is crucial to democracy in my point of view. You know, people have, you know, you believe something strongly and you have to go up to someone else who believes the opposite thing strongly. And the only way that your argument gets better and your beliefs get stronger is by, you know, actually challenging them and questioning them. And so I think that that's another thing about the legacy media, is that they don't allow for the questioning of what they believe, you know.
How dare you? How dare you,
You
disagree
can't.
with me? Shun!
Yeah. So it's just not allowed, and that is very they're always kind of complaining about, like, oh, you know, conservatives are pushing a fascist authoritarian kind of society, and no, that's not the reality. The reality is that when you don't allow certain ideas to be thought, when you declare people as deplorables and, you know, less than human for thinking certain thoughts, then you are becoming the authoritarian ruler now. So yeah, the democracy works on free and open debate. You know, I think one thing, you think another, and well, let's find out what's the truth. You know, we can't hide from the other perspective. Yeah, it's crazy.
Absolutely. Well, on that, disown the media, disown the old world media. Find the good stuff. There's good stuff out there. Look into the Unfollowed. Amazon.com, Peter Pinato's The Unfollowed. Maybe The Extrovert. You know, the extrovertmovie.com would be a good one.
I can show y'all our YouTube page if you like. Are you looking at it?
Check out our YouTube,
Yeah,
yes,
right here.
or Instagram at Pinato Brothers.
Yes. We just started this YouTube page, so hopefully you enjoy it. We got some cuts from our different things, and it's our full podcast. You can look it also on Instagram as well. So, yeah. We
All
hope
right.
to see you around.
Yeah, well, hope you guys can follow us, and I guess I'll throw it back to Peter to bring us out, but I'm James Pinato, and I appreciate you joining on this one.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, James. Enjoyed this conversation a lot.
Thanks,
Well, yeah, it's all, you know, today we talked about the Unfollowed and the culture war, and we are, this is something that's very important to us. We want to kind of not shy away from these topics and these hard questions and these hard issues, and we want to present it in a faith Catholic perspective. So if you like that, yeah, follow us and join us next time. So thank you. We're the Pinato Brothers, and we'll see you next time.